I'll introduce myself. Dara, I know you. Brooke, I got to meet you 2 weeks ago. I'm Dr. Carolyn Campbell. I'm the MSW on-campus program director. Dara has me in clinical classes for the year. And, this is just one of hopefully a few times that we offer some guidance around social work licensure, knowing that this is so important both for our profession, but also our professional and personal growth. And so what I would really encourage you is for this to be more of a dialogue. I want you to have your questions answered. And so I definitely do have some logistics and content that I want to share with you, but again, I want to put your questions at the forefront. So feel free throughout this time to unmute and ask those questions. Also, feel free to put it in the chat. And Professor Roth and also Kat is both of them will work to support me with the chat. I know Professor Lamb is also going to join us too, especially when we talk about the supervision clinic initiative that is new at Widener, and that something we are really trying to share the word about. So just a little bit about social work licensure. So today I'm hoping to talk about the types of licensure, knowing, both of you are coming in from different places in your career in social work. Talk about just the benefits of licensure. So why do we go through this process? What's the professional benefits? What's the personal benefits? Some limitations. I'll talk more at the end about that. And then go through just the details of the BSW, MSW, and advanced clinical licensure. I will tell you off the bat that the steps toward the licensure process is very similar at the BSW level and the MSW level, or what we say is the licensed social worker, the initial license. It gets a little bit more complex at the advanced clinical licensure level, the LCSW, and all of them are pretty time related and are connected to both degrees and sort of your experience base. I also want to just welcome in Professor Vlam, and thank you so much for being here. So just a little bit about the history of licensure. So licensure has been something that the social work profession has really been thinking about, reflecting on, and working toward over time. And so as you may know from our history of social work, is it began as a very informal type of helping, and over time has evolved into a formalized profession and occupation and really a vocation. And licensure has really followed that, but it is still pretty recent. So in the 1970s is where we began to have conversations about licensure, really separating sort of paraprofessional or non-professional sort of helping, ones that happen in churches, or it might happen in sort of mutual aid groups, to a specialized profession with a knowledge base, a value base, an ethical code to it, and specialized skills. And we have a different range of licensure to denote those specialized skills. So we do have probably at the newest level, this licensed Bachelor of Social Work license. And this has really only emerged in the last 10 years, and it's still has been somewhat slow to be adopted. Probably at the earliest level was our licensed social work level, and this was kind of in the 80s and the 90s, came about and began to be communicated and began to be set as the standard for all of our profession around social work. And then finally, the licensed clinical social worker advanced clinical license is what we call it. And this is also relatively new. It was late 1990s into the 2000s. And so you may meet some licensed clinical social workers who were grandfathered in to this LCSW, or licensed clinical social worker status, because there is always sort of this movement over time and recognizing that experience and that expertise. So just some benefits for the profession is, one is it gives our profession really professional credibility. some public protection around, especially in the past, there have been situations where there have been problems that have been, that have occurred in a helping process that were done by people calling themselves social workers, but were not actually social workers. And so they weren't trained in some of the skills and the specialized knowledge foundations that social workers are. They attempted to help, and perhaps that helping was not in the best direction. Perhaps there were some ethical conflicts. And so social workers may have gotten a, bad reputation from that. And so this is a way of us protecting this specialized skill set and saying, hey, it takes the skill set and this experience base and all of this rigor to define a social worker. There's definitely increased job opportunities when we move from sort of general helping to specific and specialized skills that are part of being a social worker. We do have a legal authority to practice, and so it gives us the right and the responsibility really to do things that are quite complicated at times, working with children and families, working in mental health, working around people's healthcare decisions and families and, larger governmental agencies. And so it does acknowledge that we have this competence. And it also holds us when we ascribe to our license, it holds us to specific ethical and professional standards, things that are protective to those that we serve, as well as the larger world, the larger community. And I really loved this quote. It was by a social worker saying, licensure is the way that governments recognize and acknowledge that the profession has a real impact and does provide care, professional care, and services to the public. So some direct benefits to you to go through a process of licensure is that your earning potential does really jump up. So if we're looking at someone who graduates with a degree and then also is able to layer that with a professional license, we know that the salary earnings really kind of jump up at that point. And we know at the advanced clinical levels that there can be a pretty wide gap between an initial level of licensure and then that advanced one, which is kind of seen as the height of our profession. It presents job security. Some funders, social service agencies are only designed to hire people with social work degrees, and so it secures that position. It gives a sense of professional confidence and validation, helps anchor us to our own ethics and the core values that drive us, which may look really different when we're considering educational environments or, we can think about other types of services that are not dominated by social workers. We know we have a unique voice and a unique value and ethics that we ascribe to. It also gives you the ability to network and, speak a common language with other social workers, as well as opportunities for professional growth. So I always say there's nothing like when social workers get together. We really make magic happen. We often love to communicate and come up with new ideas and ways to really, better society and think about social justice. So let's start with a Bachelor of Social Work license, and you'll see some similarities as we think about the process. A BSW, a Bachelor of Social Work, is an entry-level social work degree. It really kind of gets your foot in the door in helping professions. And often the roles within a Bachelor of Social Work consist of case management, consist of advocacy. I think of domestic violence advocacy, I think of prevention education. So it can consist of a variety of different roles. And sometimes in those BSW roles, there can be a capacity to be called a social worker. And there are different levels of that. Now, a lot of people, when we talk about Bachelor of Social Work licensure, says, well, is that required now? And what I can tell you is so much of the time, the job market dictates the need. So right now in Pennsylvania, we're not seeing a lot of employers who are asking for that licensed Bachelor of Social Work degree, or I mean, that level of licensure. I do want to encourage you to kind of think about getting that, especially if you plan to stay at a Bachelor of Social Work level. It's a wonderful license to be able to begin with. And I will tell you again, like the job market is not necessarily requiring it. That's not the case with the LSW, the postmaster's licensure. We are seeing jobs that require a licensed social worker. There are pathways to further licensure after obtaining that BSW, so you can get that LBSW, which it does involve kind of taking a test and verification that you've attended that 4-year degree in Bachelor of Social Work by an accredited program like Widener. So some people choose that they are going to go on for the Master's of Social Work degree. Again, we find that there is a large jump in salary and possibilities for roles when you're moving from a Bachelor's of Social Work to a Master's of Social Work degree. And so many people choose to move on for the MSW and get that initial level of licensure at the LSW or even move on to clinical licensure. There's also alternative career paths. There are many BSWs who are interested in more macro type positions. That again often requires a master's, a specialized master's in macro work. But there are opportunities at the BSW level. So there are also post BSW certificate options. And I've just listed a few here: children, youth, and families, hospice and palliative care, gerontology, case management. Many of these certificates are available through the NASW, and each have different experience and post-degree requirements. So I'll just give you an example that the children, youth, and families certificate option for post-BSW, it involves that you have been working for a year as a type of case manager, working with children, youth, and families. So this is a very child welfare centric certificate. It does involve about 20 hours of continuing education credits, and has a couple other pieces to it. And so many people choose that they're either going to get a certificate like this, especially if they want to focus in this area, or they consider some of that work that they're doing, the continuing education credits and the year of an experience, they start thinking about that MSW because it makes sense to apply it to that. So general steps to the BSW exam, and I'll mirror this when we talk about the LSW or the postmaster's exam, is all exams really start from the place of applying for licensure online at this website right here. It's www.pals.pa.gov. And that's really the entry point. You will register and complete an application online. You'll create a logon. You will actually do an application for the license and submit it. And then when your application is complete, you'll receive back official notification by email that you're eligible to register for whatever appropriate exam. So whether it's the licensed Bachelor of Social Work license, or whether it's the licensed social worker LSW master's exam. And the exam itself is done through a third-party company. I have a website with it in a little bit. So just to get a little more into detail about how to do this, it's important when you are applying on that website, one, it's state specific or province specific if you're in Canada. And so if you are residing in Pennsylvania and you're choosing to practice in Pennsylvania, you are going to apply to that website that I had shared before, which is the PA Department of Labor, really. and the Bureau of Affairs. And so it's important when you are looking at your state that you understand sort of state-specific guidelines. Unfortunately, applying for a license in PA right now does not translate to applying for a license in New York or New Jersey or Delaware. And so you want to be specific about applying to that particular state. And there are many people who choose to practice in 2 different states, such as when I completed my Pennsylvania license, I also applied for licensure in New Jersey. And but I did one at a time, and I've heard that process is easier than a simultaneous application to do 2 different states. There is a lot of advocacy about interstate type of work that is being done and being thought through, and that interstate compact has been passed in some states. It doesn't apply to licensure, but it does apply to practice right now. And so, you'll obtain and submit this application for license. I'm sure you'll actually pay the license application fee and then receive approval to register for the exam. So there's a fee at that point. There's also going to be a fee when it's coming to scheduling the exam. So here's just some pro tips. One is if you need any non-standard testing arrangements, you want to be able to ask for that at this point in the application. If you have any disability or health conditions, you'll want to make this clear. Any type of accommodations, and also if you need second language type of arrangements. And this is going to be really crucial because there have been some reports. A recent report did come out from the ASWB, the Association of Social Work Boards, that those that are second language or non-native English speakers, and also those that may deal with different types of needs around learning, may struggle more at passing the test. And so you want to make sure you have those accommodations in place. So the second step is you're registering and paying for the exam with the ASWB, or the Association of Social Work Boards. And so you get this authorization after you apply. You do the application online, get the authorization to test, and we always really suggest engaging in a study process. Even though your degree prepares you for the content matter of each license, it does not necessarily always connect exactly with what's on the exam. The exam itself is made up of lots of submissions of questions from social workers who are in the field. And so we always say to our students at both the bachelor's exam, the master's exam, and the advanced clinical exam is that you want to think in the ways that social workers practice. And so sometimes that can be a slight difference from some of the theory that we're teaching and kind of translating that to actual practice. So you'll receive an authorization to test. You order some practice tests, engage in a study group. And if you need any, again, special accommodations, such as a 90-day waiver or an excused absence or an extension, then you do need to contact ASWB directly. And then you'll actually schedule your testing appointment. Now, the company is called PSI, and this is listed on the Association of Social Work Boards website. And that is the company you actually schedule your testing appointment with. They do lots of testing exams, and you'll find that there's testing centers where you'll actually go and do a computer-based test. And PSI, I think the one, when I took my exam, it was at Temple University. So it's located often close or on site to many universities, but it is a center in itself conducting lots of assessments. And you receive confirmation of your appointment, and you also have opportunities to cancel or reschedule your appointment. So this is important. There are registration fees for the exams, and they're hefty, which is why we really promote that everyone engages in a deep study process before they go and take the exam. For the associate's level, there's or really bachelor's or master's exams, there's associate's types of license, but not necessarily in social work. That exam is $230. Anytime you have to retake the exam, it's also going to be another $230. So you don't want to be in a situation where you are forced to retake that exam. The advanced clinical exam is going to be $260. So just a little bit about preparation, and I will tell you that there's so many different ways to prepare. Our students have gotten really creative with this. You can start with the Association of Social Work Boards website. There's a ton of resources. There are downloadable sort of practice exams even, and then there's things that you can purchase, different products that are study exams. I know when I studied for my exam, and this was, again, 21 years ago, but I took 3 months to really spend the time to study and tried practice exams back then in the 2000s. We had a little CD that accompanied it. Now it's gotten much more advanced and has, online kind of computer practice exams. And I think that's really helpful in teaching you a lot about the testing format. So similar to all standardized exams, sometimes it's about knowing the testing format and really mastering the way that questions are presented to also be able to show your social work knowledge. And I think that's a piece of it. NASWPA does offer one-day prep courses for a fee. There's options to order a hard copy study guide. I always say check out your university. So Widener offers a Canvas-based course, and you'll see that it's really in draft mode right now, but we're hoping to get that up and running by the spring. And this is just an opportunity to, review some of the content and get a sense of how the exam might work and also a plan for how to study. We do suggest other places. Bryn Mawr runs a really great study program. It's usually 1 or 2 days, and my students have really enjoyed that and felt like that was really successful. We always promote study groups. That's going to be a very important thing in this process. And there's so much multimedia out there now. Some of my favorite sites for this is socialworktestprep.com. There's YouTube, RayTube, LCSW, and these just are a series of short videos that help you review material and think about different exam questions. And agentsofchange.com, there's a great top 10 podcasts for really thinking through some of the exams. So all possibilities. So to pass the exam, you do need anywhere from like 93 to 107 correct answers out of a total of 150. Now, what's a little confusing is that the test actually changes based on, what version you get. There's many, many different versions of this exam, all seen as kind of equivalent, but the questions are offered in a different order, and it changes slightly. But what it equates to is you need to have roughly between 60 and 70% correct to pass. And if you don't pass, you do need to wait about 3 months between attempts. And that's to really ensure that, you are having an opportunity to kind of spend the time in studying again, and areas that you need to sort of follow up on before you pay again. So I'll just quickly go into the licensed social worker requirements. It is, as opposed to the BSW level, you have to hold a master's degree. It does have to be from the CSWE accredited program, such as Widener. And there are no experience requirements at this level. Many of my students will take it in their final semester. I don't ever really encourage it because clearly getting ready to graduate and finishing up a 20-hour internship can be a lot in itself. But many students do want to be able to close that down before they graduate. Other students spend that time after they graduate to do some study process. So you need to know yourself and what's going to work for you. No postgraduate supervised clinical hours are required for the LSW at this point, and it's because you've had supervised hours really at that internship. There is I already mentioned about what happens if you don't pass, but there's kind of a slightly different process if you are taking it in your final semester. And what you'll need is when you apply, you'll need to provide documentation from your program. We do provide this in a verification of your transcript form, and that you're eligible in good standing. I'll share information afterwards, but usually people contact the Office of Social Work, and we're able to provide that verification form directly to the board. So you will get an authorization to test for the exam, and then after graduation, you have to submit your finalized transcript and degree to be able to practice with an LSW. So quickly, that final advanced clinical level. So for this, you need to complete your MSW, your education. You need to get that LSW. And that first level, you need to gain required experience and supervision. And again, go through the process of applying for licensure, getting a chance to sit and prepare for the exam. Now, the eligibility is a bit different than the first two levels. So for this, you do need to have about 3,000 hours of postgraduate supervised experience, and has to be clinical experience. There's very specific guidelines around the types of experiences and around the supervision. You do need to be supervised by a licensed clinical social worker for about half of those hours that you do clinically. Every 40 hours that are worked, and so every week, there has to be at least two hours of supervision. And then the other half hours can be a combination, a licensed mental health professional, a psychiatrist, and there's a variety of different specific requirements around that. I will tell you that LCSW, there's just a lot more specific requirements that you'll want to make sure that you're aware of. There is a process of documentation and tracking of your clinical hours. I've seen people do things like having their own spreadsheet, and I know in the Philadelphia Social Workers Facebook group, there's a lot of sharing of those spreadsheets of, how people organize and track this time and verify that, because all of that is needed before you go to actually apply to sit for the exam. You do need that information for the application, and the exam is the clinical exam. And then, yeah, you've gotten your licensed clinical social work exam, and you will have requirements for continuing education. I will tell you for both the LSW, BSW, and LCSW, there are requirements for continuing education. We need to show, as social workers, we're always maintaining up to date, trending knowledge, best practices. And so I can tell you many of us, both licensed at the LCSW level and LSW, are having our continuing education sort of requirements that need to be submitted by February. So lots of us are attending CEU events and maintaining some of those hours. So I will just share in transparency that there's challenges to licensure, and this is something that social work as a profession is doing lots of advocacy around. Recent reports have released that there's some disparities in standardized testing. Some of the same implicit biases that exist in things like the SAT or other standardized testing has been found to impact the social work test. And so there's a lot of advocacy, lots of thoughts about how to approach that. And what we really encourage our students is to really think about the ways in which they're studying. They're studying with peers, they're seeking support and mentorship around both the exam process and also that supervision process. We do know that, as I shared with you, some of the fees is that it can be a costly and time-consuming process. We definitely see supervision as the standard in our profession. And yet, when we're looking at the licensed clinical social worker level, we know the supervision required is both extensive, needed, and sometimes not offered at organizations. And so, for some of you on the call, I want you to really think about your organization currently. And if you're hoping to achieve that licensed clinical social worker level, if there is someone there at your organization that is able to provide that level of supervision. And I would tell you, most often than not, there isn't that type of advanced clinical supervisor that is available to supervise. Many students and many professionals need to seek external supervision. And often that comes with a price. It's not free. And there are state-specific guidelines that impact this. And so what I want to share with you is just this really great initiative, and I'm going to let Professor Vlam and first Professor Roth really weigh into this and share more. But in general, when we think about some of the challenges our students have had with obtaining outside clinical supervision and how costly it can be, we began to think through how can we support our students who are graduating from Widener with their MSW in getting that clinical supervision, knowing that we're a clinical program. And so I'll let Professor Vlam and Professor Roth share a little bit more about this exciting initiative.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Um,
Regina, did you want to start or?
Um, sure, I can start. So, yes, it's so nice to be here. And I was just thinking, thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for doing this. I don't think that when I went to grad school, I don't remember there being like an informational
No.
kind of session regarding the licensure process. And I know I would have appreciated it because it can be daunting, especially I know when students are so bogged down with schoolwork and work and internships. So to have this information session and to be able to have a place to go to is really a great resource for our students. So yes, we have a pilot program for a clinical supervision program. It is the brainchild of Professor Vlam. So I'll start a little bit, but as this slide says, it's a new initiative supporting a pathway to the LCSW license. We are beginning this in the fall of 2025. And it came out of, I think, what Professor Vlam, and I don't want to speak too much for her, saw as what we know is that there is a lot of inequity regarding access to postgraduate supervision, to many things, but to postgraduate supervision. And that we see this as Widener kind of putting our money where our mouth is in a way to do kind of direct anti-racist, anti-oppressive advancement in equity in providing access to clinical supervision. A lot of agencies in our area and across the country struggle with resources, as we know, because we're out there in the field and often lack the finances to be able to provide that appropriate supervision to folks when they graduate. And when folks go out to try to obtain that on their own, it can be very costly. And, because everyone's time is very valuable. So I think LCSWs probably are weighing, I need to pay back my own student loans. I need to provide for my family. So I need to charge for this supervision. And yet the folks that need the supervision are often coming in fresh out of grad school, often in, earlier entry or level positions that often don't provide the compensation that would allow the flexibility and the freedom to access supervision. So I'm going to pass it to Professor Blam now, who can kind of describe.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
you did a beautiful job. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is these will be 2 cohorts, 2 pilot programs. It is for when you are graduated, we will walk you through the 2-year plus 1 month of supervision. You will get individual supervision, you will get group supervision, but you will get different kinds of group supervision from different kinds of people who don't look like just me and Regina, and also who do lots of different kinds of work. So this is going to be a very beautiful, comprehensive, supportive program where we hope we're going to develop a lot of community too, and that you can break off and have your study groups and your cohorts, and you can continue with your own supervision together if you want.
Great,
I think that's it.
Yeah, thank you so much. As you can see, we're super excited about this initiative.
Oh, can I say one more thing? All of this
Yeah.
presentation, while it's all 100% correct, sounded really scary and big and daunting. Here's the deal. You're going to go to graduate school, you're going to pass and you're going to finish, and you're going to take your first test, and you're going to just do all the things you have to do to take it, like you go get a passport and anything else, right? You just do all those things. You're going to study real hard. You're going to take your test. You're going to come to us for supervision, and then we're going to support you the rest of the way forward.
Thank
It's
you.
not as big and scary as it sounds.
Thank you so much, Professor Lamb. And so you can see we've got 2 of our lovely advanced standing students. Dara, you can see this beautiful photo we took early on. And, we always, in addition to the supervision initiative, really just promote students really to think about Widener. We're really an university that what is unique about us is really having social justice at the core, recognizing this is the fulcrum of our profession. We have a trauma-focused curriculum. We are a clinical concentration program and highly community engaged. We do have multiple program formats, and Derek can attest to this, advanced standing, both in full-time and part-time capacity. We do have a large online program. We do have a PhD program too. So multiple levels and multiple formats to pursue advanced standing or full-time at Widener. And then, of course, at the master's level, we have pretty unique options. We have the trauma recovery certificate and the school social work certificate. We'll have a whole nother lunch and learn about that in November. Our supervision and clinic initiative, which Professor Lamb and Professor Roth spoke about, and then our dual human sexuality and social work degree. So lots of different ways that really support a specialized knowledge base and skill base that enables our students to be really competitive in the field. And so I'm always available to kind of talk about some of these options. Many of our MSW students are new to kind of thinking about certificates. And the great thing is that we look at these certificates as ways to layer your education and MSW on top of some of your coursework. And so the trauma recovery certificate doesn't necessarily require any extra courses, but gives students the advantage of participating in a monthly seminar training with experts in the field of trauma, whether it's ranging from equine therapy to you know, other kind of trauma-specific modalities. The school social work certificate does require one additional course and focusing your electives more on school-based context. Both the trauma recovery certificate and school social work certificate do require that in your clinical year, that advanced clinical practice year, that you do specialize your work in either a school context or a trauma recovery context. So it gives our students the advantage of having that experience base to match their knowledge base. And so I want to just offer these additional resources as we close this and get some time to hit upon any questions that anyone has. And these are just great resources, both from the NASW PA, but also New Jersey and Delaware, where most of our students are, and giving more information, some of those frequently asked questions that you can follow up on. So thanks for just being engaged in what we're presenting, and I'm going to